You know, seeing this wood in daylight, I don't think it's such a bad place after all, remarked Baldmoney. Nor I, answered Sneezewort. In fact, I think it's a wonderful wood. I've never seen so many trees before. The two gnomes were sitting on the trunk of a fallen pine tree just inside Crow Wood. They'd slept all morning, partaken of some excellent smoked minnow at noon, and now in the early afternoon they felt fully refreshed. Around them, the forest floor was dappled with patches of sunlight and cool, inviting shadows. Close by, their beloved Folly Brook, beset with masses of red dogwood and guelder roses, gurgled happily under its canopy of green. "We must explore this wood very thoroughly," said Baldmoney, as they made their way through the trees, "and get in touch with the rabbits and hedgehogs and the badgers. They're bound to know if Cloudberry came here." "The question is how," put in Sneezewort. "We haven't seen a living creature inside the wood." "You're right, Sneezy," said Baldmoney. "And, come to think of it, there's no birdsong." All of a sudden, the wood seemed to lose some of its warmth. While close to the Folly, they'd not missed the song of the birds, for the music of the stream had filled their ears. But now they seemed wrapped in a great quiet. Under these circumstances, you can well imagine the reaction of the gnomes when a strange voice suddenly called out, "Oh, good afternoon." What was that?" whispered Baldmoney, his teeth all of a chatter. Sneezewort's eyes were wide with fright. "I don't know," he answered. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to frighten you," called the voice once more. Turning round, the gnomes found themselves in the company of a somewhat elderly rabbit. "Bless my soul, a pair of gnomes," said the rabbit. "I didn't know there were any gnomes left." "Yes, well, and what on earth are you doing walking about in Crow Wood like this?" cut in the rabbit. "It's hardly the place for an afternoon stroll, you know." "Well, actually, we're looking for Cloudberry," answered Sneezewort. The rabbit thought hard for a moment before replying. "Well, I don't think I've heard that name before. Who or what is Cloudberry?" And so, there and then, the gnomes told the rabbit all about Cloudberry, and how in the autumn he'd set off to find the source of the Folly and never returned. They spoke also of their own expedition and how dangerous it had been. "Well, this is hardly a safe place," said the rabbit. "In fact, it's very dangerous indeed. I think you'd better come back to the burrow. Perhaps the family can help you." With the old rabbit leading the way, the gnomes passed through some thick undergrowth, along a steep bank, and eventually came to the warren, where any number of rabbits were sitting and playing in the sun. Again they told their story, this time to quite a large audience. And when they'd finished, the rabbits thought for a minute, then chatted with each other and nodded their heads wisely. "Well, it seems," said the old rabbit, "that some of them do remember hearing about a gnome in Crow Wood, but they're not sure if it was last year or the year before. But the story goes that..." The old rabbit suddenly broke off, and putting his head to one side, he listened very intently. Away in the distance, from the very depths of the wood, came a strange noise. Whatever it was getting closer to them. Then, from the top of the bank, a young rabbit on lookout gave the warning. That was the danger signal. "Giant Grum, I'll be bound," whispered Baldmoney as the explosion died away. And from the darkness came the voice of the old rabbit. "You're right, gnomes. It was the ogre himself. I wonder which of our wood people has been killed now." A few moments later, and the gnomes emerged into the sunlight again. Everything seemed peaceful as before, and then they looked down. Before them, impressed into the red earth, was the print of an enormous hobnailed boot. "By the great God, Pan," said Baldmoney, "he is a giant." "A giant and a killer," answered the rabbit. "And he doesn't have to catch you. He has a club of thunder that can kill at a great distance. So take my advice, gnomes, and leave Crow Wood as soon as you can." And with that warning, the old rabbit ambled off to his burrow. 2 hours later, and Crow Wood was a dark and a mysterious world. The sunshine had departed, and dark, menacing clouds now moved swiftly over the trees. The tall pines swayed and rustled in the wind, and still the birds were silent. Baldmoney and Sneezewort were now in low spirits. They were alone, they were cold, and they were lost. "Perhaps we should have left the wood. After all, the old rabbit did warn us," said Sneezewort. "No, we must go on," argued Baldmoney. "Some of those rabbits seem to remember another gnome being here. We must keep looking and asking." "And who do you suggest we ask?" questioned Sneezewort sarcastically. But at that moment, they heard a very peculiar noise from above. Before them, on the ground, lay a large hazelnut. "That nut can mean only one thing," said Sneezewort. "A squirrel." The gnomes looked up, and there, directly above, a little grey face peered down through the branches. "Great Scott," said the squirrel in amazement. "Tiny little people, why in heaven's name are you so small?" "We are not people, and we're meant to be small," answered Baldmoney indignantly, adding rather proudly, "Actually, we're a couple of gnomes." "Ah, well, that explains it," replied the squirrel, "though I must admit I've never met a gnome before. Would you care to come up to my dray and have something to eat?" The invitation couldn't have come at a better time, for the gnomes were in need of company and warmth, and above all, food. "Well, that's very kind of you," called Baldmoney, and the two gnomes made for the tree. A while later, and they were happily settled in the squirrel's nest, right at the top of the pine tree, and very comfortable it was, too, made of sticks, lined with soft leaves, and not a bit draughty. And now, between mouthfuls of nuts, Baldmoney and Sneezewort again told of their search for Cloudberry. The squirrel listened carefully, and when they'd finished, he nodded wisely. "Well, I'm not sure, but I think I did hear tell of a gnome who was seen here during the winter. The best thing we can do is wait till morning, then go around the forest and ask." "I didn't know there was anyone to ask," put in Sneezewort. "The place seems just about deserted to me." "I can see you two don't know much about Crow Wood," answered the squirrel, "and it's time you did." So, as darkness fell and the wind grew stronger, the squirrel told his tale, a tale of horror and misery and suffering. "The giant has been here as long as I remember," he said. "He started by killing all the crows, and ever since he's been slowly exterminating the rest of us. That's why we all stay in hiding. He has no mercy. Owls, hawks, stoats, weasels, even blackbirds and thrushes. And when he's killed them, he hangs their bodies on the gibbet for everyone to see, as a warning to us all that our time will come." "But how does he do it?" asked a fearful Sneezewort. The squirrel looked up, his face drawn and sad. "He shoots us, he snares us, he sends ferrets down the rabbit burrows, and he's taught his vicious dog to kill anything that moves, except for the pheasants. Haughty, arrogant creatures they are, too, and he's breeding them so that they can take over the wood completely." "That's one of them now," said the squirrel. "And when they give that warning call by day, Giant Grum comes running to kill us." It was almost dark now, and the gnomes sat silent, lost in thought. Had this evil giant caught Cloudberry? Had Cloudberry too been strung from the gibbet as a reminder to others? They each shuddered at the thought, and fully realized now the horror of Crow Wood.